Rain hammered the old barn roof so hard it sounded like bullets, but the giant cowboy inside barely flinched, until he heard a tiny, broken sob from the shadows of his hayloft. He froze, one gloved hand still on the stall door, his broad shoulders blocking the weak light from the single bulb. Out here, miles from town, nobody came onto his land. Nobody dared. Ethan Cole was the quiet giant, the man the town whispered about, the one who lived alone with his horses and ghosts. He heard the sob again, softer, like someone was trying not to exist. His heart, rough and guarded, thudded once, hard. He stepped toward the sound, boots crunching on straw, every instinct warning him that trouble had finally found its way to his lonely ranch. The girl tried to shrink further into the hay, fingers trembling as she pulled her soaked hoodie tighter around herself. Her breath came in shaky bursts, her eyes wide, tracking the looming figure approaching. She'd thought she was safe here, hidden in some stranger's barn at the edge of the endless fields. After all, who would even notice her, a runaway with a bruised cheek and a bag that held everything she owned? When the cowboy finally stopped in front of her, the storm outside seemed to go silent for one terrifying second. Ethan stared at the tiny, shivering bundle of fear curled between bales of hay, a streak of mud on her cheek, dark hair plastered to her face. She looked like she'd been dropped here by the storm itself. His first instinct was to demand answers, to tell her to get off his land. But then he saw the purple shadow on her cheekbone, the raw scrape on her knuckles, and the way she flinched from his gaze like she expected a blow. Something inside him twisted, something he'd buried under years of solitude, regret, and the memory of a sister he hadn't saved in time. "Hey," he said quietly, his deep voice barely audible over the rain. "You hurt?" The girl's lip quivered, but she shook her head, even though everything about her screamed pain. "I'll leave," she blurted, her voice hoarse. "I'm sorry, I just needed somewhere dry. I'll go, I promise." She scrambled to her feet, but her ankle buckled under her and she stumbled, catching herself on a bale. Ethan moved without thinking, his big hand spreading in the air like he didn't want to spook a wild horse. "Easy," he murmured. "Ain't nobody tossing you back out in that storm." She stared at him, breathing fast, like she didn't understand kindness spoken in that low, steady tone. Why not?" she whispered. The question cut deeper than it should have. Ethan swallowed, jaw tightening. Because once, years ago, he hadn't opened the door when someone needed him. Because the guilt had lived with him every day since. Because he'd promised himself he'd never stand by and watch someone drown when he had a rope to throw. "Because I ain't that kind of man," he said simply. "Sit. You're safe for now." Her shoulders sagged with a mixture of relief and disbelief. He led her down the ladder slowly, watching the way she favored her right leg. The barn smelled of hay, leather, and rain-soaked earth, a strange kind of comfort compared to the storm outside. "Name?" he asked as he pulled an old wooden chair closer to the heater in the corner. She hesitated before answering. "Leah," she said softly. "Just Leah." Ethan nodded, respecting the small boundary she'd drawn. "I'm Ethan," he replied. "You from around here, Leah?" She shook her head quickly, hugging herself. "Does it matter?" He studied her for a long moment and finally shook his head. "Not tonight." Silence settled between them, broken only by the rhythm of the rain and the restless snorts of horses in their stalls. Ethan grabbed a clean towel from a hook, handing it to her without saying anything. Her fingers brushed the fabric as if she didn't quite believe it was meant for her. "Thank you," she said, so quietly he almost missed it. "You got folks lookin' for you?" he asked, even though he suspected the answer. Her eyes darkened, pain flashing across her face. "Probably," she muttered. "But that doesn't mean they should find me." He didn't press, but his mind filled in the blanks: violence, control, promises broken so many times they'd turned to dust. He'd seen it before in town, heard it in the hushed gossip at the diner. Men who smiled in church and shouted behind locked doors. Leah's flinch, the bruise, the way she kept glancing at the barn door, all of it told him more than her words ever could. "You can stay in the loft tonight," he said. "It's warmer near the roof. I'll bring you a blanket and something to eat. We'll figure out the rest when the sun's up." Her eyes filled with tears. She tried to blink away. "Why are you helping me?" Ethan scratched at the stubble on his jaw, gaze drifting to the rain-streaked window. "Someone should have helped my sister," he said, voice rough. "Nobody did. I was young, stupid, and she slipped away before I could do anything. I ain't lettin' history repeat itself." Leah's expression softened with sudden, aching empathy. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Me too," he replied. "Now, let me get that blanket before I change my mind about feeding strays." His attempt at gruff humor pulled a tiny, broken laugh from her, and for the first time that night, the barn didn't feel so haunted. By morning, the storm had passed, but a different kind of thunder rolled up the dirt road to Ethan's ranch. Leah woke to the rumble of an engine, her heart dropping into her stomach. She crawled to the edge of the loft and peered down, breath catching when she saw the dusty sheriff's truck pull up outside the barn. Ethan, already awake and stacking hay bales with the ease of long habit, went still. Their eyes met, and she shook her head frantically, panic flaring. "They're looking for me," she hissed. "Please, don't let them take me back. Please." Heavy boots approached, the barn door creaking open. Sheriff Daniels stepped inside, pausing to let his eyes adjust from the bright morning to the dim interior. He was a broad man, weathered by years in the sun, with a gaze that missed very little. "Mornin', Ethan," he called. Ethan wiped his hands on his jeans, moving to meet him halfway. "Sheriff." Daniels tipped his hat, his gaze sweeping the barn. "Got ourselves a situation in town. A girl's gone missing. 16. Foster home claims she ran off after some disagreement. We got reason to believe she may be headed this way. Some tire tracks suggested someone might have given her a ride." Leah's heart pounded against her ribs. 16. The word echoed inside her like an accusation. She clapped a hand over her mouth to keep from gasping. She knew the story they would tell, that she was troubled, ungrateful, unstable. They always made the runaway the villain. Down below, Ethan's jaw worked silently as he processed the sheriff's words. He kept his back to the loft, as if that alone could shield her. "You know me, Daniels," Ethan said slowly. "I don't go looking for trouble, and I sure as hell don't invite it home." The sheriff chuckled, but his eyes remained sharp. "That's what I've always said about you. But this girl, folks are scared. Foster father says she's confused, might hurt herself or somebody else." Leah's breath hitched as tears pricked her eyes. "Hurt herself? No. She'd run because she wanted to live, not give up." Ethan heard that hitch of breath, faint as it was, and it burned through him like a branding iron. He took a step closer to the sheriff, deliberately blocking his view of the loft ladder. "You talked to the girl's friends?" he asked. "Or just the man who gets the state checks for keepin' her under his roof?" Daniel's gaze narrowed just a little. "You know something, Ethan?" he asked. Ethan shrugged, broad shoulders rising and falling. "I know the way some men lie," he replied. "And I know fear when I see it." The sheriff studied him, then glanced around the barn again. "Then you won't mind if I have a look around." That was the moment, Leah realized with icy clarity, when everything would either shatter or change forever. Her fingers dug into the straw, body trembling. She was so tired of running. So tired of being hunted. She closed her eyes, silently begging for a miracle that seemed impossible. Ethan felt the weight of that invisible plea like a hand gripping his heart. Years of keeping to himself, staying out of other people's messes, fell away as he made a choice that would change both their lives. "You can look," he said calmly. "But there's something you should know first. Daniels paused,